Okay, in this demonstration I'm going to talk about how to do the mixing for the secondary colors. That's part of the color assignment for this week. So what I've done is I've laid out my canvas board into 3 sets of 4 squares each. Now you can measure them any way you want, it doesn't matter, as long as you have 3 rectangles and each of them is divided into 4. Because what we're going to do is we're going to mix a different version of the secondary, whoops, there's some paint on there, into each of these. Okay, so this is going to be the greens because I've already got green there, but I've already labeled it. And I also want you to do that, label it. So in this one, for instance, this will be the greens, this will be the oranges, and this will be the purples. In the greens, we have 2 possible yellows, which we can mix, cadmium yellow and cad yellow light. We also have 2 blues, ultramarine blue and phthalo blue. So with those 4 primary colors, we have a total of 4 different kinds of secondary greens. Now obviously we can have ranges within that, but generally speaking, the cad yellow will mix with each of the 2 blues, the cad yellow light will mix with each of the 2 blues, and we'll get 4 different. So that's what I want you to do for the greens, oranges, and also the purples. Okay, so you'll be doing it like this. It's good to squeeze out 2 of each, because once you get one color, you know, the ultramarine blue into the cad yellow light, and then we want the phthalo blue and cad yellow light, we don't want the 2 to mix, so it's good to have 2. So we'll just spread out the cad yellow light a little bit, take a little bit of phthalo blue, mix it in there. Now what you want to make is something that's not too much this way or this way, you know, so it's not too yellow, it's not too blue. So I'm going to consider this a little bit on the yellow side. I'm going to bring some more blue into it until you get a nice green. Let's get a little bit wetter. Might be too wet. Okay, so this is my green mixed with cadmium yellow light and ultramarine blue. So I come over to cad yellow light, ultramarine blue, and that's going to go here. I'm going to make that just a little bit bluer, so it's a little bit more close to what we call a middle green, not too much of either end. And then just paint that in. And I don't care how neat you do it. I don't want you to make a total mess of it, but I just want you to be able to see for yourself. So how you present this, you know, if there's fingerprints all over it and it looks kind of messy, that's fine, as long as I can clearly see what you've done. All right, so paint it in a box, or you could paint just the swatch. The key thing is that you label so that I understand what you understand by that particular mix. And then try to make it even. Don't make it too, you know, have parts of the canvas showing through in places and not in other parts. So that'll be okay for that mix. Okay, so that's a green that's made from cad yellow light and ultramarine blue. Okay, so I'm going to clean my brush really well. And now what I'm going to do is mix the cad yellow light with the phthalo blue. Now be careful, because phthalo is a very, very powerful color. It takes over very, very easily, very quickly. So when you're mixing, it's not really a question of the same amount of this and the same amount of that gives you the perfect one in between. If we were to do same amounts with phthalo and cad yellow light, it would be blue. Okay, because phthalo is that powerful. So again, I'm going to spread out my cad yellow light. Make sure your brush is clean. Then I'm going to take a little bit of phthalo, and you can see how powerful that is, right? How quickly that tiny bit just takes over. And you should also notice the difference in the quality of the green, which you should know the answer to that based on the lecture we had this week about color. I'm going to get a little bit more blue into the mix. Maybe a little more yellow. Again, so it's not too blue or too yellow. And that's going to go here, all right? So that's going to be the square that represents the mix of those 2. can see that I've got pieces of eraser on my board from when I erased some lines. So you kind of smooth that out. You can make them touch, you don't have to make them touch, but just make it kind of even so that we can see the difference in the two greens and we can see what the components were. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing this, and then I'll come back and we'll start on the oranges. Okay, so the green is complete, and you can see what you should have are four very distinct greens in terms of their quality. It's not about being lighter or darker, but actually the hue quality of the greens and the chroma. Which ones are the most saturated, which ones are the dullest, high chroma, low chroma, and you can see that the cad yellow light and the phthalo blue, for reasons we've discussed, is the highest chroma green you can make from this combination of paints, and this one is the lowest chroma green, cad yellow and ultramarine blue. Okay, so we're going to keep doing the same for the oranges and the purples. So when you come to the orange, it's the same routine. You start with one square, so we'll start over here with alizarin crimson and cad yellow. So here's my cad yellow, my alizarin, so pull the yellow out, get a little bit wet, add my alizarin, and make an orange. Put that down there. Let's make it a little thicker so it's not so watery looking, just means more pigment. And you notice I don't make a big pile. I pull the colors away. We're going to talk about that later in the course when it comes to color mixing for the actual painting. All right, so just kind of lay that in. And a little bit more paint, thicker consistency. And what you want is something that's relatively even. You don't want to have red bits and yellow bits within the square. Just kind of even it out. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue, and we'll do all of the other colors in the orange group. Okay, so you can see I finished the oranges, and you can see where the highest chroma orange is. Now I'm not sure about the light. I haven't reviewed the video yet, and I know you're going to see it under different lighting conditions and under different types of devices, your phone, your computer, so that could shift things a little bit because it is much more subtle. But you can see that the cad red light and the cad yellow make the highest chroma orange. These two are a little weaker, and this one is the weakest. And again, to recapitulate what we talked about in terms of what makes something the highest chroma, it's not that this orange has red and yellow in it, it means that these reds and yellows have orange in it, and this has the least orange. Okay, so that's why it gets duller and duller. So when we come to the purples, we're going to do the exact same thing, but the purples tend to be fairly dark and kind of harder to see. So you have several choices. A, don't worry about it, just do it. B, you can paint it kind of thin and let the white come through a little bit. Or C, you can add white to your mix. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've got some white here so that you can see. And so we'll start off with cad red light and ultramarine and phthalo blue. Let's do these two mixes because we did this in our example on the PowerPoint, and you know exactly what you're going to get. So take a little bit of the phthalo blue, be careful. Bring this into it. And again, if it's too red, we want it a bit bluer, and if it's too blue, we want it a bit redder. And you can see immediately that this red and this blue does not make purple. And again, the reason is because there's no purple in these particular pigments. Now it's fairly dark, so I'm going to lighten it in a minute. Let's just get the mix going. Then bring a tiny bit of white into the mix. You can see that's pretty bluish. So I'm going to bring some more red. But we're not really going to get a high chroma purple. In fact, we're going to get a very dull, dark, depending on your pigments, could be very, very brown. So ultramarine, cadmium red light, sorry, phthalo blue, cadmium red light is going to look like this. So we'll take that mix in there. That's the dull purple we're going to get. So I'll finish painting this, and then I'll use the highest chroma purple, which is the ultramarine blue and the alizarin crimson. And again, it's because both of them have purple in it. Okay, so you can see what we get, a very kind of purplish brown, very low chroma. Another ways of talking about it is low saturation or dull or low intensity. And so the most saturation, the highest chroma, is going to be over here. So now I'll take my ultramarine blue and I'm going to mix it with my alizarin crimson. And you can see there we're making a nice purple. To be consistent, I'm going to put white in it, a little bit of white, just so we can see the color just a little bit more. But you know that white does dull the color, right? So if you don't want to put white in it, that's perfectly fine. Let's make it a little more intense with some more blue. It allows to wipe it so you can see the white of the board coming through. You can see it's a little bit more of an intense purple. Let's get some more blue in the mix. Now, because it is a mixed purple, you'll never get it as bright or as high chroma as other purples that you can actually buy, like cobalt violet and things like that. Those are much more pure and the colors are much more intense. So I'm not going to add much white to this just because the white does make it pastel-y, does dull it. I did add it to that because it was just so dark and we couldn't really see anything in that color. This has a little bit of white in it. We'll kind of even it out if you can. Okay, so there we have it. You can see that I've let a lot of the white come through of the board so that we can actually see the colors, except for this one I put white in it because it was pretty much black. This is the highest chroma. This is the weakest chroma. These two are in between. These two are much similar. So you can see that the alizarin crimson has a lot to do with making this color. Likewise, if you look up here at the greens, the cad yellow light has a bigger influence than the cad yellow or even the two blues. And over here, the alizarin crimson is the dulling element. Okay, so I would do this before you do your complementary mixing, because from here you're going to choose the highest chroma, the brightest secondary colors, which is going to be this green, this purple, and this orange. Okay?